It was a good trip. It was a good trip. You know, it's really, we talked about, you know, we had one discussion after our dinner on Thanksgiving, and everyone else left, and including my wife, and it was just me and a couple of dudes, and we were talking about life and what it brings, what it means, and motivation. You know, is it money? Is it intelligence? Is it, you know, I don't know. Is it anything else? What is it that really drives us? And it was kind of interesting. One guy, like I had mentioned here, with the guy who sat down with us tonight, I had mentioned that one was a creative writing major, and he took school very, very seriously, much more seriously than I, when I was in there. He did take a few years off, and then went to school. That is to say, between high school and college, he took some time off, and that was where he went to AmeriCorps to meet my wife, amongst others. And it was pretty wild. He really enjoyed what he was doing, and he took it very, very seriously. But in the West, and specifically in America, if it's not a hard science, it's essentially not a science. And you know, who's to say they're wrong? I've argued forever, and I will continue to argue, that sociology is not a science and should not be viewed as such. It's really not, and I know that a lot of people within the field would call me a heretic, but I'm telling you, it is not. I don't know. And I know they're like, well, there are quantifiable things that really, you know, behavior and, but the thing about a science is you have to be able to quantify things. And the way you know, the scientific method starts with a hypothesis, and then it goes into methodology as to how you might find a conclusion that supports or does not support your hypothesis. Then it's officially a theory if it can be posed and logistically make sense according to reality, though it doesn't necessarily become fact ever. And therefore, okay, sure, sociology fits into that. But really, the human psyche is one thing. Let's assume that you can tack down the human psyche and make sense of something so everywhere. The human being, because that's really what sociology studies, the human being, beyond the psyche. You know, the psyche is basically, you know, it could be a number of chemical things as psychology gets into. It could be a number of interactions between your brain and others, and electricity, and so on and so forth. But it's more than that. Like in sociology, to a sociologist, you take into account gestures, which do have, you know, a psychological component, a very large psychological component. But you know, some gestures are unintended, and yet they're perceived by the author. They're unintended, but they're perceived by the onlookers as meaningful, and that gets really complicated. You know, it's like Freud, who said sometimes a cigar is a cigar. Well, when and where is my question, and the answer is, well, it's really kind of up to the author. You know, you kind of go, you pay as you go. And because of that, because you never know if you're right or wrong about your gesture or someone else's, or the meaning of either, you see how it's already getting muddy. Leave it out. Just think about it, discuss it, enjoy it. But don't try to quantify it and gauge it as though it were a science to do so, because it's not. There's a song, I looked up sociology on YouTube the other day, and there's this guy, he's an MIT prof who plays the piano to some comical lyrics, and he had a song called Sociology, and I think he's actually, he was kind of speaking down to sociology, not sociologists, just sociology, and I know a lot of people would be offended, sociologists would be offended by what he had to say to his rather magical tune, but I totally endorse it. I agree. It's not, it's being improperly used at this point in history, I believe. That said, I think it's going places, but I think it needs to be kind of, I think the people who study it and study under it need to kind of be situated in a position that allows them to view what it really is, and that is simply more view. You know, sociology, as I've said before, is, in a word, perception. That's it. And, you know, until the sociologists get that, it's going to be wrongly defended by them as a science that can contend with the, you know, the biologies and the whatever it takes to become a doctor's, you know, those things. Not cool. Not cool. in my opinion. I think it just sells the whole thing short. But, that's just me. And I'd never got great grades, so who am I to say? You know. But, I was going to put on a shirt today, and I almost put it on because it'd be a great story. But then I thought, well, I'm not going to wear that shirt because it's not as comfortable as the one I'm wearing, and I'd cover it up with my jacket anyway. What do you notice I'm missing? A jacket. I didn't bring it anyway, so I'm a little chilly, and I don't have the shirt on to tell my little story. So the point is, it says Suomi on it. It's a blue shirt with white writing, white script, and it just says Suomi, which is S-U-O-M-I. That is the official Swedish, or rather Finnish term for Finland, whereas Finland is actually Swedish in its origin as a term, which is wacky, but they were overtaken back in the day. And in fact, if you go to Finland today, you'll see many of their signs. A lot of the road signage includes Finnish and Swedish. And Finnish is actually such a wacky language. Apparently there are 14 different ways to say every individual word, which really just gets complicated. Very few people can speak it, outside of Finland anyway. And so they all speak just immaculate English. But I remember, the story really is in LA when I was converting. I remember I was living over by La Brea, which is a very Jewish part of LA, over by Beverly Hills, off Beverly Hills. And they had a ton of just really good Jewish or kosher eateries. So I went in there, and I was living hardcore kosher back then, right, for this week and a half period. And I get out of one, I have my groceries in hand, this guy walks up to me, just from off the street, not coming from the store from whence I came. And sure enough, he's like, hey man, what's your shirt mean? I said, oh, and I explained everything. And I said, Suomi, that it means this. And then so we go on about this conversation, not unlike the one we had here today, which was kind of it was across the board. You know, it could have gone anywhere because the scope of the authors, you know, could go anywhere. And it did, certainly. And the point is later, what's that? Later, yeah, we're in the middle of a conversation, and I mentioned something about Suomi, or Swami, or whatever, and he goes, having asked originally, what's that mean? What's that about? Having asked that earlier, he actually corrects my pronunciation of the word. He goes, Suomi. It's Suomi, which I thought was hilarious. Good time had by all. He ultimately asked me for money. I told him, well, I've only got $3. He was like, sweet, that's exactly what I want. And what was wild is he was like, that's just what I need. Could I have your $3? I said, absolutely, man, here's $3. And he was like, sweet. I gave him a ride back to his place, dropping him off at the liquor store. And when I get to the liquor store, he's like, this is why I need the $3. Straight up, totally honest. And I was like, awesome. You drink some of that for me, because I was studying. You know, I had a ton of studying to do. The Tanakh. But really, really interesting times. Allow yourself. Are you guys still recording? Let me check something real quick. Yeah. It'll cut off at some point rather soon. But allow yourselves to, in my opinion, it's healthy to open yourself up to the possibility of discussing things with what might seem perfect strangers, but I see them as, you know, what they call fellow men, fellow women, people who inhabit this planet with us. And, you know, they're interesting. They don't always make the most sense to you at the time, but perhaps upon reflection, they might. You have to, of course, keep safety in mind and seriously at hand, but as long as you have your priorities straight and make sure that, you know, you're not going to get, you know, hurt by doing something, I think it's totally worth investing the time and effort into getting to know one another and kind of allowing the others to, I tend to find that people want to discuss, people want to speak. All you cell phone lovers, you guys want to talk. You know, you guys want to get down with another human being, but you tend to be very insulated, which is why it's very important that you collect your numbers and keep those very specific people on there with your caller ID, which I respect. Nonetheless, we're in a time when, you know, you have services like MySpace who connect you to friends, but these are people you haven't met who are all about self-promotion, and I'm not knocking on MySpace. I'm simply saying that people want to reach out, and they're looking for people to reach out to. And, you know, if you walk along the way and you've got time, you see a kid doing something interesting and open, go ahead and just, you know, start it up, you know, enjoy things. I don't know, I enjoy it. I get a serious kick out of it. So yeah,